Hello there, YouTube. I am Necrostevo, and it is time for battle number 4. In the PPL NX Stage 2. Our opponent this time will be 1Z Bonnet and the Solihull Skarmoors. And let's get over to his team. You'll find his information in the description. But 1Z and I have battled many times over these storied years. His team this time consists of Ogrepond Wellspring, Enamorous in its incarnate form, in the incarnate form, Chiyu, Necrozma, Roaring Moon, Klefki, Hatterene, Chandelure, Toadstool, Orthworm, and Torchic. With 5 Terra captains, his Pokemon that can Terra are Klefki, Chandelure, Toadstool, Orthworm, and the Torchic. As far as what we decided to bring up against 1Z, our dedicated lead for this battle will be our physically offensive sub-bulk up Supercell Slam Acrobatics Thundurus with the Citrus Berry. We also have yet another Assault Vest Primarina, a Choice Scarf Meowscarada, a Terra Fairy Body Pressing Terra Blast Abalug with Heavy Duty Boots, our Cornerstone Ogrepond with Ivy Cudgel, Power Whip, Low Kick, and Knockoff this time, and then an Assault Vest Quaquaval with Aqua Step, Close Combat, Aqua Jet, and Rapid Spin. We can see that he decided to bring Torchic, Klefki, Ogrepond Wellspring, Chandelure, Necrozma, and the Roaring Moon. With this setup, I was anticipating the Roaring Moon to maybe be booster speed, with some sort of setup, maybe like a bulky Necrozma and Spikes Klefki. Since he did bring the Torchic, that is not to be slept on, because 1Z would never just bring something for the lulz of it. And so I was looking through the moveset that Torchic got, and I was like, maybe he's some sort of weird, like max HP counter set, or he can get Feather Dance and really neuter my physical attackers. He could also have screens somewhere and annoy me with Torchic setting up that way. I really wasn't sure what to expect from the Torchic, but knowing that it was Terra Electric going into this alongside Terra Grass, Chandelure, I kind of knew that I had my work cut out for me there. So leading off into this matchup, I did decide to stick with my dedicated lead, and so we are going to start off with our Thundurus. He does lead Ogrepond, and so I know I outspeed that by just 1 point here. And so I'm just going to go straight for Substitute to see what he goes for. Maybe a U-turn. He shouldn't want to stay in because I could Thunder Wave him. He does stay in and he goes for Knockoff, which I am completely okay with. I can just keep on substituting here. And thinking that he's going to keep on going for Knockoff, as long as I lose my item, that means that my Acrobatics gets powered up. So thinking that he's going to go for another Knockoff, I do decide to swap it up and go for a Bulk Up on the next turn. And on this turn is actually when he does decide to swap it up, and he goes for the Ivy Cudgel, which is very dangerous because a crit Ivy Cudgel would KO me. Thank goodness he didn't critical hit me. I do still accomplish the goal of using up my item, but I would have preferred to sub again there as opposed to taking all that damage. I would have just lost 25% of my HP instead of losing quite so much. But now we are at +1, so I am going to just hopefully be able to throw off an attack here. I also could have just gone for the sub, which would have been the better play, but now that he sees what I'm doing here, the sub would have been amazing right there, honestly. He goes up to Klefki, which takes the Acrobatics really well. It also would have been good here to go for the Supercell Slam, because it would have done a critical amount of damage to the Ogrepond, and then the Klefki coming in would not have been able to take that. As I set up my substitute, he does get a Reflect Up, which I was like, no, I'm not going to be able to do as much damage here. I do just switch for going for Bulk Ups as he swaps in his Necrozma. With 2 Bulk Ups, it's basically neutralizing the screens. and I didn't want to let him set up too much here. I go for Supercell Slam just to maximize my damage output, and I was actually pretty pleased by how much damage that Supercell Slam did after the bulk ups and the reflect. So definitely not horrible. He does go for Photon Geyser, which does confirm to me that he's going to be some sort of setup variant. I was really hoping that he was going to be a special setup variant and not a physical one. And so I decided to swap out to Primarina here. I could have stayed in and continued to go on for attacks, but I didn't want to lose my Thundurus this early because I know that I outspeed his Ogerpon, and that's just good speed control for later on. That would mean that the only thing that he has faster than my Thundurus is his Roaring Moon. So I do decide to go out into my Primarina. Primarina is a weird set. It has max defense and max special defense with a little bit of speed. And that I ended up running that a couple of times just because I like Primarina's ability to take hits. And here you can see that works out really well. Unfortunately, he does have Sword Stance. And I was like, oh man, if he's physically offensive, then I'm not going to be able to take the hits quite as well. And he has his own Citrus Berry, so it's just straight up berry buddies here in the beginning. Ogerpon versus Ogerpon, Citrus Berry versus Citrus Berry. It's just wonderful out here. But it's not surprising to see so many Citrus Berries, because as J. Ricky informed everyone, Citrus Berry is one of the best items that you can run in Draft League. So I was very dismayed to see the Moonlight there, because now all my work is undone. Again, a lot of this is just positioning to stall out the Reflect. I guess in stage 2 here I have to deal with screens a lot. I just realized that this is the second or the third time I face screens, I'm pretty sure. But anyways, though, he does take down my Primarina, and I really should have swapped out into Avalugg sooner, but I was afraid he'd have special setup there. And so I didn't want to bring in Avalugg and then get blown up by like a Focus Blast or I don't know, even like a Thunderbolt or something like that. So we bring in our Avalugg now, and we do get to Terra out of a lot of those weaknesses into Terra Fairy. And I didn't really know what he would want to go for. He goes for Photon Geyser again, but even at +2, that doesn't really do that much damage. And I just go for Iron Defense to hopefully force this thing off the battlefield. Now, I don't have a good way of hitting the Chandelure, but I was hoping to pressure the Chandelure into Terraing. That was my aim, at least, because then I wouldn't have to play the game of, oh, is he going to be weak to my Dark type moves, or is he going to be weak to the Triple Axle? So if I could force the Chandelure into using its Terra early, that also will hopefully remove any weird shenanigans from the Torchic later on, because knowing it was Terra Electric, I was like, well, that's not great for Quaquaval either. So yeah, just a couple of different aspects going on. The other thing about Chandelure is that I have a dedicated swap in, which is my Assault Vested Quaquaval. Barring him, having Will-O-Wisp and going for a burn there, Quaquaval can handle Chandelure all day if it's just like an offensive one. So I do immediately go out to it here. He goes for Flamethrower, which doesn't do that much damage, but he does snag the burn. So that sucks, because now Quaquaval can't really do anything against the Chandelure. Highly unfortunate there. Now, I guess I would be risking anyway, like the Flame Body with using Aqua Step and such, but at least then that would be getting burned after I do the damage, whereas here I've not had an opportunity to do any damage to anything. I decided to make a call here and go for Close Combat, expecting either the Ogerpon to come back in or for him to Terrastalize into a Grass type. Either way, Close Combat will cover those two options. I didn't anticipate him staying in and not tearing, because then he'd be risking the Water type move. I do get the call correct here, which is great. Unfortunately, it doesn't really mean anything just because of how little damage that I do to the Ogerpon there. And because I did so little damage, I figured he actually might stay in with the Ogerpon and go for maybe a setup or offensive type move. He ends up going for a U-turn, and so I could have gone for Aqua Step right there, but I did not want to give the Ogerpon back its HP. I really wanted it to be in the range to where Meowscarada could easily finish it off with either Triple Axle or the Flower Trick, or of course that also keeps it in range of my Ogerpon going for its own Ivy Cudgel. So that's why I didn't really want to risk going for the water move right there in case he stayed in. Now he goes back out in the Chandelure, and so close combat is just going to whiff. And unfortunately here, I just don't have enough HP to take any moves or really anything from the Chandelure. There's no point in even swapping out really, because I would have to guess what coverage move it's going for here. And Shadow Ball is just so free into this slot here. I would have just been taking unnecessary damage on something else by swapping out. So not great having the Pokemon that you brought to counter something be completely demolished by it. But we did get a little bit of chip damage on the Ogerpon, which is somewhat helpful. But I was really dismayed to see that play out the way that it did. Now after this though, I do get a swap into my own Ogerpon here, but he surprises me and goes back out into his Ogerpon, and so my Aqua Sweat does end up giving the darn thing its HP back. And I was like, Wednesday, please stop swapping around and just kill my Quaquaval, please. Like, you've neutered it. Can we please move on to the next stage of the battle here? I'm not going to be able to save the Quaquaval either. And he keeps on U-turning and switching out and coming back. And I was like, just KO me. Come on, dude. And so, yeah, not the greatest there, because now the Ogerpon is back out of range of like a triple axle. Possibly could still KO it with the Flower Trick, just depending on if he's max speed, max attack, and no bulk. But man, I really didn't know what to go out to here. I could have gone into Ogerpon or Meowscarada. Again, my Meowscarada is scarfed, and so I was figuring, okay, if he goes out to the Chandelure, I can go out to my Ogerpon and just click the Ivy Cudgel here. That's either going to force him to Terra, or he's going to swap out into something else. And then either way though, I wanted something to take the damage from the Ivy Cudgel. Now, if his Chandelure had gotten KO'd here, that would have put us into a very different endgame. So he ends up going out into his Necrozma, which is fine by me. But he doesn't end up going to Necrozma. He ends up going to the Ogerpon with the Ivy Cudgel. And you can see there, that's exactly why I wanted that chip damage from the Quaquaval earlier. If I had called that better, then his Ogerpon would have been KO'd here. But now we're into the situation where we're in a speed tie. And you all saw earlier when we went up against the regular Ogerpon with the Teo Mask, we lost that speed tie. We also lost a speed tie against a Zoroark earlier, which is also 110 base speed. So can we win a speed tie now? No, we cannot. We can, however, lose over half of our HP to this U-turn, and we do not win that speed tie. It would have been so good to win the speed tie there. That would have put us so clinched for the end game, because my Sturdy would have been intact versus whatever he wanted to bring in. Alas. We do go for Ivy Cudgel here. Necrozma does get KO'd, but the crit really didn't matter there, because either I would have won the speed tie and knocked out the Ogerpon, then he would have brought in the Necrozma, or we had the situation where I would have been able to go for two Ivy Cudgels anyway versus the Necrozma. So that crit didn't really end up mattering too much there. Now he brings back out his Roaring Moon, and so that means our dedicated swap in, which is our Terra Fairy Avalugg, is here, and we're just going to bring that in immediately. Now I figured that he would probably U-turn or Dragon Dance in the situation. He does go for U-turn, which to me at this point in the battle kind of telegraphed that he was scarfed. And I was like, okay, if he's scarfed, that's good, because that means that in the end game, if I can get him down to 2 Pokemon that Meowscarada can hit with triple axle, then I can win. Alternatively, that means that if it's just his Roaring Moon versus my Avalugg, then that's another way that I can end up winning in the end game. Now Klefki comes in here, and I was like, do not set up screens on me again. But also, I don't really have a good way to stop it. Like, I have Flower Trick, which will critical hit through the screens, but the things that I'd be targeting with that resist the Flower Trick, so that doesn't really help me too much in the end game. I figured instead, let's just try to put some damage onto the Klefki, and so I go for Body Press, and then thinking that he would try to swap out into the Chandelure again, I switch up and go for Terra Blast. But instead of swapping out, he goes for Fairy Lock, and that is a move that traps both players on the screen for next turn. So that means neither he can't switch out this turn, and I cannot switch out. And I was like, I think he's gonna Steel Beam me, isn't he? And then he does pull out the Steel Beam, and that sucks, because I did get him in range for it to at least be one of those delicious double downs that I love so much. But this also means that he gets maximum turns out of his Reflect. Because of Light Screen and Reflect being boosted by his Light Clay to have the maximum amount of turns, and everything that I have being left being a physical attacker, this is possibly the most annoying endgame that he could have set up for me. So thank you, Avalugg, for at least forcing the Klefki to KO itself with the Steel Beam, but not great. Not great into the endgame here. So for the endgame, we do have a full health Meowscarada, and we have very, very low health on our Thundurus and our Ogerpon. He goes out into his Torchic on the double down, and I am very happy that I went into Meowscarada here, because I didn't know what to expect, but I did know that I could just go for knockoff no matter what he went for. He does surprise me by deciding to Terra the Torchic after all of these mind games on. Is he going to Terra the Chandelure or not? And I knock off a Scope Lens as he goes for Focus Energy, so I was like, is there a critical hit move that I don't know about that the Torchic gets? And his game plan was just to most likely go for Overheat, and he would have had guaranteed critical hits with the Overheat between the Scope Lens and the Focus Energy. And so that would mean that it did not matter that his special attack would have kept on falling. If he kept on critical hitting, he would have ignored the special attack drop. Fortunately, we're a Choice Scarf Meowscarada, and so even after the speed boost that Torchic gets, we will still be able to outspeed Torchic. So this was a serious threat, and I did not know it at the time. And thank goodness I decided to treat it with respect, because he could have just rolled my last 3 Pokemon right there with the Torchic. Now unfortunately, we are locked in on knockoff, and that means he gets a free swap in to the Roaring Moon. And that puts us into a little bit of a 50-50, because I could knock off his Choice Scarf right here. If I knocked off his Choice Scarf, then does that really benefit me though? Because Meowscarada would outspeed it either way. And so I do elect to sacrifice my Thundurus at this point in the battle, and I did that thinking that I could see what he was going to lock himself into, which he does lock into Dragon Claw, and I could go back out into my Meowscarada and then maybe call the swap into the Chandelure and go from there, maybe? I wasn't really sure. So earlier when I lost that speed tie, I lost out on the ability to have a full health Ogerpon at this point in the battle. I could have had full health Ogerpon and full health Meowscarada. Alas, that is not where we are, and I have to figure out, is there any way for me to win this? And I just don't have enough pieces left to sacrifice to reset the move choice on my Meowscarada. If I come in and I go for Triple Axle now, he very easily can just switch out into the Chandelure, and then the Chandelure not only has a chance to burn me with the Flame Body, but it is not terastallized, and so since it's not, I'm going to either hit it with a resisted Triple Axle, or I can go for the knockoff. Yeah, it's just a really difficult call to make, and it's not really a 50-50, right? It's more that I'm in a check position more so than checkmate. All he has to do here is go to the Chandelure, and from that position, I get burned, most likely. Here he does decide to sacrifice his Ogerpon, which that's just a free sack on his side, because he's trying to do the same thing as me and just reset the move that his Choice Scarf Pokemon is locked into. I did go for U-turn there, because if he decided to stay in, U-turn would do a decent amount of damage on the Roaring Moon, and then I could sacrifice my Ogerpon. But since he decided to go that way, now he gets a free swap back into his Roaring Moon, and this is now checkmate, because I don't outspeed the Roaring Moon with anything that I have, and so he's going to get to KO this, and then go back out into the Chandelure, and then I'm forced into the same 50-50 of will it Terra, will it not. I know that it can't Terra, but the 50-50 now is against the Roaring Moon and against the Chandelure. And I did find out later on that this Chandelure actually had Colbur Berry, And so the whole time I was thinking, oh yeah, it is, you know, some sort of offensive build. But since it had that all along, there was no way for me to actually KO it. So I would have needed like a crit knockoff, I guess, to go through the Culverberry in order to KO it at that point. But all that to be saying, thank you very much, Onesie Bonnet, for the battle. We're going to end up losing this battle 0-2 for battle number 4. And I felt like I could have played this match a little bit better. I liked how I played in the early game a lot. And even then there were some 50-50s with the Thunderous where I could have put more damage onto his team earlier. Losing Quackleval to the burn and not getting any damage against the Chandelure with it when that's what it was here to do, that sucked a lot. So I think that was the point to where I should have played a lot of my pieces a little bit differently there. But alas, we do not end up taking home the victory here. And I really think that came linchpin on my Quackleval getting burned so early. But thank you very much, Onesie, for the battle. I appreciate it very deeply. I always look forward for the opportunities for me to face you on the battlefield. And that means we just have one more battle for stage 2. So come back tomorrow and we'll check it out. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful night. And thank you for watching another one of my battle videos. Good night.